RZ, why don't you go ahead and start it up?
Now, all right, welcome everybody. Today it's going to be me and my sister and my fellow laborer, co-laborer, Genetics, the beast that she is. She'll be kind of headlining the conversation, and I'll be kind of sidekicking. And we're just going to kind of touch on points in regards to presentation or performance, whatever you may call it. But these are the things that happen when you're on stage, things to be aware about, things to be cautious, things that you're encouraged to do, and some things that you actually be not to do. Just keep in your mind because like we're going to be coming from a place not that we had all experience, but we've bombed horribly, and we've also seen things that have been more effective than others. So that's kind of from the place that we're going to be coming from. I'll let genetics kind of spearhead and go from there.
Yeah, just so you guys know, this won't be a spearheading. You will also see Ezekiel and I go back and forth a little bit because it's just the natural relationship that we have. Really excited to just for you guys' ears to even hear anything we have to say. I'm really humbled by that. And I'm grateful for just the opportunity to talk to you guys and share with you some of our horrible, horrible, horrible experiences so that you don't have to do the same thing. Horrible experiences. Most of them have been with Ezekiel and Ready or Not, but but yeah, horrible experiences. I'm not sure where everybody is at as far as experience, as far as I know all of you guys are great writers. I haven't seen specifically everybody present live. I have seen most of you present as far as recorded or on YouTube or all those things, and I do really, really respect all of you guys' crafts. So the main thing, if you feel like I'm going over something that you feel is like common sense, please forgive me. I just kind of want to start from the bottom to make sure that I kind of cover as much as I can possibly cover, and that Ezekiel can cover as much as he can possibly cover. And we'll just kind of start with just some of the basics of presentation. The main thing that kind of is a huge thing to just start off with is basic delivery when it comes to how you're using your words, what you're saying, and dealing with the level of projection and articulation, and how you want to choose to use the different tones of your voice. I don't know if some of you have been in different experiences where you've seen people start delivering poetry, and they're like, they start saying certain words, and the letter P's and the S P start popping off real hard. Microphone. But there's specific consonants that just as someone who's kind of meticulous about presentation that I would be mindful of, and those are the specific consonants as far as like the letter P and saying the letter S and saying the letter T. They can also be used to your advantage. D's and P's and different consonants can be used to drive something that makes it kind of feel a little bit percussive in your delivery. So those are just some different things to be mindful of when it comes to that. When it comes to articulation, this is a big, big thing. It may seem minor, but it's a big, big thing. I know sometimes like we get in these moments where we feel like we've done the piece enough times to where you really know it in your head and you're just gonna, rumble through it. But articulation is a key thing, regardless of what you may think or what you're trying to do, unless you're trying to do something very weird. Articulation is a key thing because of the simple fact that sound travels. Even when you're in a microphone, I don't know if you guys have ever had the experience of you heard like a car like blasting down your street, and as the car goes away and drives further down, the sound gets more distorted, and that's just basically what sound does. And so it is important to overly pronounce it, overly articulate. When it comes to the aspect of projection, a lot of times you'll be spitting and your mic will go out. I highly encourage you, do not respond to the fact that your mic went out. Do not respond to the fact that, okay, you want to get mad at the sound people or the engineer people because your sound just went out. As a professional, it is your job to make it happen. There's been plenty of times I've seen Preston, I've seen Ezekiel. It's been so many different situations we've been in. I mean, in Africa when there was rolling blackouts and there was no electricity and no light. You just got to continue to do what it takes to make it work. In that case, that's when the projection is really key and really important. Being mindful not to yell from your throat so that you can continually use your voice regularly and consistently But just being mindful that when things happen, when things go bad, it's not your job to show it in your face to respond, but to be so consumed with the presentation that you just immediately adjust and adapt to the environment or adapt to what's specifically going on. I'll let Ezekiel tap in really quickly.
Right. So Netix is addressing a lot of the technical things that you're going to face once you begin to start performing more. I think a lot of you are performing poets, and the more you perform, the more diverse experiences you're going to have. I want to kind of just tackle some of the things, the mindsets to have as you begin to try to find your voice as a poet. One thing that I've noticed, like from, you got family members that are not fans of poetry, and when they come to some of the poetry events, man, all these poets sound the same. That's what I really want people to kind of begin to do as Christian poetry, and just poetry in itself begins to rise and begins to grow. We should all try to find our own voices, and one thing to consider is intentionality when beginning to find your voice for a particular piece, or just in general your style, whatever the case may be. Just be intentional about what you're doing, how you're doing it. There are times, of course, as we grow, we see other poets that we admire, and we want to take their style, and we want to sound like them. That's kind of like the beginning of really trying to learn what you like. But as you get past that, you don't want to get on the stage sounding like Genetics or sounding like Jackie, whatever the case may be. You can be inspired, but don't imitate. So intentionality is one word. Being natural is the best way to be able to overcome, that copycat syndrome. Just finding your voice, whatever is a natural place for you to be in. Like if you don't talk like standing in truth, walking on whistles, like if you don't really talk like that naturally, then sometimes when you try to sound like a poet, you sound too poety, and it becomes kind of gimmicky, and people are like, I've heard this before. But if you can find your voice, and the more natural or the more true to you sound, the more people hear originality. And that's the last point. Originality and creativity. You have to kind of be willing to take risks, to be creative and do things that have never been done. And even if that just means trying things that you haven't seen poets do, if it means like getting so involved and absorbed in your poem that you become your poem just to be able to express a voice that needs to be heard, like do that, whatever it's going to take. If you have to get the mic and the sound, like Janette is talking about with the sound and mics, get it to a place where you can be able to whisper something. I've seen it done. Genetics has done it before. She's whispering, and she's on the ground, like going into a place where you can find, like she's like in a psychotic zone, and she's using whispering for the first 1 minute of the piece. If you have to do that for your voice to be expressed, then whatever that is, do that, and don't be afraid to do it just because it hasn't been done. I'm sorry, passing the mic.
Is everybody good so far? Just put a thumbs up if you are. Everybody good so far? Okay. Everybody's frozen on my side, so hopefully your thumb went up. Ezekiel, you're good?
They're frozen on mine too. Like I see Desiree moving, but I didn't see no thumbs though.
Okay, cool.
Oh, okay. I think I see. Okay, 1, 2, two thumbs.
Okay. First, just want to address a little bit of what Ezekiel said. The level of commitment in which you choose to just die to yourself for the sake of your piece. I've seen like just so many great writers, but I see a lot of times where it would have been amazing if you would have completely committed. I kind of see like where it's like a 70% thing, where it's just like, oh, I see where you were trying to go, but it didn't really completely go all the way because you didn't necessarily really want to commit to it. In your writing process, I can just speak from personal experience. For me personally, in the writing process, I'm kind of just thinking about different things that I may specifically want to do or may specifically want to try. And that's the key thing, like being willing to just try a lot of different things just to convey the message. Because I think for all of us, our goal is to be able to convey the message so that people walk away with a better sense of who Christ is, with a better sense of how to handle a situation, with a better sense of getting more knowledge about the specific topic that you're talking about. in a very creative way. So as an artist, it is your job to stain the mind of someone so that even when they walk away, it's still, resonating in their mind, resonating in their heart, resonating in their soul. The way that you do that is to really specifically commit yourself all the way to the piece. And when I say commit yourself, if you're doing a piece and you think it's gonna make sense if you slobber for the piece, I would say commit to slobbering. It just really specifically depends on what the message is that you're trying to convey. The average person's gonna be like, I don't really want to slobber because that's just nasty. Well, you're not specifically conveying a message for yourself. So just be mindful of completely committing. There's a lot of times where people try to say like, oh, genetics always saying, I don't believe you. That is true. Because I think a lot of you are familiar with someone saying a line, or you've watched other poets, and it's just not believable. They're saying a lot of great things. I don't know if you've seen anybody talk about love, or somebody talk about love, and you can tell they've never been in love, or better yet, talk about heartbreak, but you can tell they ain't never really had their heart broken, based on how they're delivering the piece. When we think about heartbreak, we think about, okay, we can say there's crying and we can say there's tears, but we can say there's absence of an appetite. How are you going to convey the absence of an appetite in your tone and in your voice? How are you going to convey the brokenness? How are you going to convey the emptiness? How are you going to convey the detachment? Those are all things you specifically want to consider. And when it comes to considering those things as a poet, in most cases you have your voice and you have your body, your hand gestures, all of those things. So I really, really, really want to encourage everybody to stay away from this is like the good movements versus bad movements. And I don't think I've seen really any of you do it, but just make sure, like, the part where it's like the predictable movement. The sky was shining and I looked up.
Show us. We want to see what that looks like.
Sky was shining, so I looked up and I bent down because my Heavenly Father told me to pray. And when I pray, He loves me unconditionally. Like, like those are all things that are predictable. One thing Ezekiel said, he talked about being natural. And I think the best poetry is relatable and it's easily communicated. We know that when we talk, we don't do this and that. We don't talk like this and talk like that, and that's not how we talk. That's the beautiful thing about spoken word, is we're just communicating what's resonating in our heart. And if you're honest and you're true about it, then it will resonate with other people. So I would advise politely to stay away from the predictive hand gestures. I think even looking at a lot of the different processes, I know a lot of different people audition, and a lot of times that's a make or break. When we can tell, like, okay, this person's about to do this or this person's about to say that, I would just really, really do my best to be intentional about not being able to be predicted. Zeke, you want to tag on that?
Yeah, I love what you said. Yeah, the sky. That's a big one. I want to touch on just like when you talked about intentionality with your body language. I think that's huge. Like even like we do a lot of reviewing of auditions and submissions and things. Certain people are excellent writers, and certain people have excellent words, but sometimes the body language doesn't convey the words they're saying. You have to find that connection between what you're saying and what you're showing people, because the truth of the matter is, people only have what you give them. If you want to take notes on anything, take note on that. People only get what you give them. They only, on their plate, they only have what you serve. So you can't, like, in your mind, you're like, man, this is incredible, this is epic, this is beautiful, this is impactful. But if your body wasn't able to convey that, if your voice wasn't able to convey that, then no, it wasn't, because I only have what you gave me. One thing I've noticed, I just in watching other poets, is one thing that helps you command the stage while you're there is being intentional with your eyes. Like you have to recognize that the eyes, like, it's something about the eyes that have the ability to engage. And if, let's say, a piece not require at the audience, if you're coming from a place that you're real elusive or shy, or you're from a place like as a child, we're talking about things like that, you keep your head down because it's in character. But besides that, to command, like, you can really just command the stage by being intentional about making sure that see you, they feel you. Like just stepping on the stage and just saying A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Just that one scan across the whole the building shows that wow, like this dude means what he says, or this lady means what they say. You could be shy as heck. Me personally, I never look at people when I do my poetry, even just like I'm talking to you right now. I make it seem like I'm looking at the audience, but I'm looking like right over their heads, looking at the tops of their heads, because I just find it hard to look at people directly. But I make it seem like I'm looking at them directly, and it almost like your eyes convict them. Your eyes convict them to believe what you're saying. And like Janette says, that's the goal. You're trying to relay a message, and you want to get it across effectively. So your body is involved, your voice is involved, your positioning, your posture is involved, and your eyes are heavily involved. So just be intentional about how you use your eyes, and don't be afraid to scan and use your eyes to penetrate, to just really to make it seem as if you're X-raying people, because it causes them to respond, or at least give their ears, lend their hearts to what you're saying. Passing the mic.
I'm not like Ezekiel. I do look at people because it just feels kind of psycho sometimes, and I think that's a part of my brain. Um, uh, when the goal, I would suggest that a lot of times as poets, we spend a lot of time in the writing process. I would advise that you spend at least like an equal or double amount of time in the thinking process of how you want to approach the delivery of your piece. Every single thing you should have a reason for. If you do something with your voice and I say, hey, why are you doing that? You should be able to say, okay, Janette, I'm doing that because by raising my voice like this, it helps the audience understand that I'm speaking from a place of authority. If I say, hey, why'd you lift your hand right there? You should be able to tell me, okay, Janette, I lifted my hand right here because what I'm specifically doing is I'm taking the audience's eyes off of my eyes that were intentional and now bringing their attention somewhere else. So just be very intentional and know why you do every single thing that you do. Let your voice know your punctuation. So by saying that, I just mean that like don't take lightly the intention of a period, a pause, a comma, semicolon. Like I never used semicolons before except for when Ito corrects my work. But now if you ever want to be humbled, let Ito correct your poem. But like all those things are there for a reason. When you specifically were writing your piece, there are parts where you started to pause and break. So I would encourage you to write with punctuation. I know a lot of times when I'm writing my pieces, like I'll write certain things in all caps because I specifically want to really bring a lot of attention to that word, or that word, or I color code certain words because I want that word to be in conjunction with this word, to be in conjunction with that word. When the color changes, I know that I'm shifting the complete direction of where I'm trying to go emotionally. And so my encouragement is to desperately seek to do what has not been done before. Like desperately seek to do what nobody else has ever done. Like abandon fear, abandon everything else, abandon the idea of like, hey, I might look stupid if I do this, or hey, I might look dumb if I do this. Abandon all of that, and be willing to specifically going back to committing to the process of the piece. But it's not okay to just commit. Like commit to being authentic. Commit to like taking the time to say, okay, I may be talking about a topic that somebody else has talked about before. Let me think about how I can present it in a different way. Don't be afraid to do research on a topic that you're talking about. Don't be afraid to, take into consideration different ideas. If I'm doing a piece on osteoporosis and I refer to osteoporosis in my poem, man, I better know the reality of what osteoporosis really is. And what happens to people who have that? What happens to their bones? How does it affect them? What does it actually look like? And I may do all of that just to specifically be able to be honest in my delivery of knowing how to stand in that one specific line. And so I think you were gonna tap on just the authenticity aspect, Zeke. No? Yes?
Go ahead and snatch that.
What'd you say?
Go ahead and do that for me.
I'm not gonna do anything for you. I keep talking.
Just being I think being authentic, it comes from really just looking at what you're saying, like if what you wrote is true to you, is really connecting with your own piece. And a lot of times we just write what we write for others. We write what we write to imitate others, and we don't connect with our pieces. So we find it difficult to really find a voice that is authentic for our pieces, and find movements that are authentic because we don't know what we're talking about. So this kind of goes back to the writing, making sure that you can identify or you're passionate about what you're speaking about. If you have no real passion or investment in what you wrote about, then it'd be really difficult to try to pull real passion or emotion out of the piece. One thing that I've admired from people like Janette, I'm moving to a next subject, is just really giving it 110% every time. Like, I mean, you say what you want. There are few people in the field that we're in that can perform as well and as captivating as Genetics. And I'm not saying it because she's the person I travel with most, and she's a good friend and sister. But I'm saying it because I've seen her, like, literally. We both just exited the same conversation where we just busted up laughing. We both ate the same sandwich or burger or whatever the case may have been, and she goes on there and she goes into another realm. She goes into another place. Like she says, she sells herself completely and entirely to that particular moment, and she gives it everything she got. Like, if it's a poem about conviction, you're going to feel the conviction. If it's a poem that's supposed to evoke some type of concern, then the emotion is going to be evoked. And it's really just being, as like she said, being as vulnerable as possible, and just making sure that you're being intentional to give 100%, despite how there's been times, like, I think I've been called out by, was it Jackie or Preston? I think Preston, most recently, he was like, man, when you performed that piece, you didn't give it your all. And I was just like, wow, why didn't I give it my all this time? And sometimes we take into consideration environmental factors or other factors that are going on within ourselves, or, oh man, they're not clapping, so it doesn't spur me on to be as passionate, or whatever the case may be. But don't let external factors affect the way that you're delivering a message that can cause a change in someone's life. And also, just really, you're going to go into situations where you do one piece somewhere and people are clapping, screaming, shouting hallelujah. You go to another place, people are silent, and you're hardening your mind even really appreciate you. If they're hearing you, if they're feeling you, don't worry about it. Give it 100%. Act as if, if you go and get passionate, just pretend as if they're shouting and screaming and hollering, or whatever the case may be, whatever gets you into the zone that you can be as passionate as possible, because someone is receiving it, and people respond differently in different circumstances. So don't allow that to affect the way you communicate your piece. So that's just one thing you may notice, or you probably have already noticed when performing. You want to touch on anything? We're going to start opening it up for questions in about, what time is it?
Yeah, just
In
same
about
thing.
3 minutes. 3 minutes. Okay, go ahead.
Ezekiel, uh, just being able to have the privilege of different cultures respond so differently. I've been in situations where it's been all brothers and sisters, and it's like, girl, you did that. I'm like, oh, what you like about the piece? You just did that. Okay, do you have a part that you remember? Girl, I don't know, but you just did that. I'm like, okay, so there's the yelling and screaming, but you got nothing? Okay, and it's been settings where nobody said anything. I'm like, hey, like, what did you like about the piece? Oh, I really like the scripture reference you used, and this and that and the other, and I'm really going to be able to apply this and apply that. So you got to really not base, just be consistent. Be very consistent. I think the hardest thing for me ever, Ezekiel was there when I lost my grandmother, was when I was on tour in Africa, and we had just having to have to still, knowing that my grandmother would have wanted me to be continually moving. I wanted to go home, but I know she would have been like, yo, like, my granny wouldn't say yo, but she would have been like, I done ran my race, you got to still run yours. So the push and the grind of really trying to continue to pursue what I know the Lord has allowed us to do, but to not sit in that very moment and really even allow myself to it's still a grieving process, but it's like I had to still be committed in that moment. I think that was probably one of the hardest things to ever do. So just encouraging you guys, like, be committed no matter the circumstance, the situation, cramps, like the devil is no respecter of the menstrual cycle. Sorry guys, but I'm just saying, like, he is no respecter of that. You got to completely commit whatever the situation. And I would say subject yourself to harsh criticism, and I do mean harsh. Subject yourself to harsh criticism, one, from people who know your craft and that you may aspire or are inspired by or look up to, and also to people who don't know the craft. Because for people who don't know the craft, you don't want to speak and be going over people's heads. That's the hard balance of poetry. But it also depends on your delivery. If you're a poet that's, you know, considered extremely in depth with your lyricism and everything like that, like Ezekiel is ridiculous with puns. So, but if he didn't do the delivery that he does with the puns, I don't think most people would get that it's a pun. So I would say, like, just subject yourself to harsh criticism. I mean, I think every time all of us write a piece, the first thing we do is pass it to everybody that we know and just be like, yo, Ezekiel, what you think of this? Preston, what you think about this? I usually go to Ito first because she's the hardest one, and, you know, she just makes you want to rewrite your whole life. But making sure that, you know, you have people around you who would tell you that it sucks, like, this is garbage, this is whack, you need to start over, whatever the case may be. So I know we're getting ready to open up for questions, but Preston has to make an announcement really quick.
Hello, guys. So I was asked to make this announcement by my pastor, Brian. So I think like four weeks ago, I was asked to do a poem, write a short poem, and record it, a short poem for This Is Our Daily Bread Ministries. I don't know if you guys ever heard of them. They're like a really old ministry. They started like in the 1950s or something like that. They're a well-established ministry, and so I just been building like a relationship with them, just trying to get them to the Legacy Conference for the longest, actually. So this afternoon they had a meeting with my pastor, and they wanted to get involved with the poetry slam. They really, you know, trying to venture into spoken word. It's sort of kind of new to their ministry. They never really incorporate like spoken word poetry until they did my poem. I think they released it today, early this morning. But long story short, the winner of the slam, they want to produce a poem for you guys. So whoever wins the slam, they will produce a poem for you guys. So this poem doesn't have to be in the slam. This poem can be anything you guys want. And when I tell you that, like, they're legit, like when it comes to just videography and just creatively, like, it's really, really dope. So just be thinking about that. So that's like, I guess it's like one of the awards that the winner would get as well. You get like a full production from Our Daily Bread Ministries. So just be thinking about what poem you want to record if you're the winner. And I think the runner-up gets something too. I'm not for sure. But yeah, that's it. So.
We want to open it up for questions, but
Thanks,
I also want to say I don't think I know everyone on the call. It would be dope if you don't have a question, just, you know, introduce yourself, and then kind of like something about, I don't know, maybe some concerns that you have or something that you're looking forward to for the slam, or just anything that is longer than a sentence, and if you don't have a question.
I have a question. My name is Jezere, but y'all know that. My question is, so I think, like, just as a person, that was gonna sound crazy the way I said it, but I tend to be pretty polar. So it's like I have an extreme personality, so it's all or it's nothing. And even emotionally, it's all or nothing, but even the all is kind of one-sided. And so what to me translates as passion is pretty much just aggression half the time. And so I don't know if I know, and that's just as a person. So when I'm talking to people, people are often like, okay, so I feel like you're coming at my neck, but I'm not, I'm just talking. And so in performance, I don't think I know how to, like, reach into another place emotionally. I guess because as a person, maybe I just am closed off emotionally, and this is not about to be a counseling session because who has time? But like, I don't know if I know what to do performance-wise to reach those other spaces. Question mark.
Edits or good? I would say a comment because I really don't have one answer for you, but along the lines with original things that we talked about as far as being as natural as you can, the worst advice I could give you is to get and to act like you can be a type of way that is not natural to you. I mean, that is one sense of what we do. There's a theatrical element to what we do, but I would rather see the real Desiree than the acting, simply performing Desiree. So as for now, reach in the same places that you reach in to pull the aggression are the same places that you're gonna pull to get other emotions. I just think sometimes you really got to settle and kind of look into yourself, look deeper into yourself, and also to study. Like sometimes there's some things that are not as natural to us. Like let's say we're trying to do a piece, and the piece is very light in nature, or there's a comedic nature about it. We would it's just an example. We look at others that have to be successful and effective at doing that. Take note, not to say, well, my next poem is going to be comedy. I don't care. It's not natural to me, but I just want to have this type of variety. I don't know if that's the effective way to do it, but just to be able to watch to see what they've done and then be able to kind of look at that, analyze that, and somehow try to find your voice in the midst of the ocean of everything that's out there and allow it to come naturally for you. If you have to grow as a person, to grow as a poet, I think that's the most effective way.
If I were to give my quick 2 cents, I think I would just say, let me ask a question quickly, Desiree. In the aggression side of it, is there ever a moment where there's a buildup, where there's like a time bomb kind of situation where there's a buildup to the aggression?
Yes and no. For the most part, yes, but sometimes it's just present.
Cool. So I would say, like, find those little bitty brackets of moments where there's a buildup and hone in on that, because I think I can definitely relate in the aspect of aggression. And so, but there's a moment, and it's gonna people will probably refer to me as psycho, where it's like there's a moment where you have a short period to back away. I'm giving you this opportunity. I'm giving you this out. You have a short period. You have a window to back all the way away from me before I spit this shrapnel all over your throat. So I would suggest is to take that moment and kind of, this is going to be a musical term, but loop that thing. Like, just take that, loop it and 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 sit in it. Because sometimes you actually have to just be quiet and sit in the time bomb moment and literally have different certain things. And it's going to sound rough, but moments, situations, aggravations as a child, things that you dealt with, things that you went through, and put that mug on replay, on replay, on replay, and to the point to where you're able to, like, now you can go get it. It's now just a tool in your belt. Now you can pull it out any specific time that you need it because you know what it is. Hopefully that's a little bit helpful, but I understand what you mean, because it's like, this is all I got. This is who I am, and this is all I got, and I can't give you nothing other than what I am. And that's the amazing thing of a great poet. But for you, the difficulty is going to be, it's really going to be actually like pulling back the rug on some things that you haven't even addressed yet, that are still just inside deep. And that's the hard part, because it forces vulnerability, and that's the most difficult part. And the hard place to be is vulnerable on the stage, but I believe that's what God called us to be as poets. It's to bare our souls for the sake of the betterment of the body, so that they can see, like, oh snaps, you got a scar too, or oh snaps, you got stretch marks too. Great, this is wonderful. But you have been chosen as that frontline warrior to bear yourself naked in front of everybody. Please don't go crazy, YouTube, because I already know. Yeah. Just to be so honest and pure in your delivery, to the point to where you have to take that time to revisit situations that still really hurt, that still haven't been completely dealt with, and go walk yourself back in your mind. And I know it's hard because it's like walking back inside of, you don't know what's going to happen. It could be Pandora's box. We haven't visited there in a long time. So walking back into those moments and taking those trips down crazy lane in your head and being able to just go and just capture that thing and like, okay, I got the moment I need and I'm going to loop that thing. Hopefully that just didn't sound crazily psycho, but I feel like you're a little bit on the same, so psycho is okay.
No, it was perfect. It made a lot of sense. I appreciate it.
Cool. Anybody else?
Yeah, I guess I'm up. Hey, Emmanuel here, North Carolina. My question is with voice control, because there have been a few times where I've done a piece on stage, and by the time I get off stage, I'm just about hoarse because I guess, pulled it all from my throat and not from my diaphragm. So I was wondering what advice you could give to kind of help transition that from it being all up here to more from the gut. So when I do walk off stage, or if I do have to do more than one piece a night, I still have a voice at the end of it. So, yeah.
Medics, that's all you.
I don't know. Ezekiel's gonna say. I honestly would say, take a voice class. It may sound crazy, but I would say take a voice class, or at least go on YouTube and learn some vocal exercises. I can send you some links even tonight of some vocal exercises, because even for poetry, you have to do vocal exercises. I know sometimes like I do different stuff, so I've kind of had those in my pocket, but it is important that you specifically, it is important that you know how to use your voice, because you develop nodules on your throat, and then you'll sound like a raspy, angry person that's been smoking. So we don't want that, and you won't be able to use your voice anymore. So even with speaking, we can't just say, oh, just go from your diaphragm and don't from your throat. I think people have probably told you that, and you're like, okay, I'm trying, but what the heck does that freaking mean? Like, so I would say there are just some different YouTube exercises that can teach you specifically how to warm your voice up and how to specifically speak from the right place. It talks about when you're specifically speaking, what should your stomach be doing? Should it be engaged? When you're talking, should your stomach be expanding, or should it be going in, like, should you be in, like, it's very technical. But if you want voice control, you gotta seek out for it, and you gotta get real technical about it. It sounds like a lot, but it's worth it. Z? Ezekiel.
I think you hit it all right on the head. Like, I'm from the hood. I never took no voice classes. I just do it real ghetto style, and I've never had a problem with that. So I couldn't even give you advice on that. I think that was excellent advice.
Yeah, everybody's throat is not as buff as your arms. So if your arms look like that, we're sure your vocal folds.
Next question, please. Next question.
I have one. Am I being heard? I don't know.
You're being heard. You're always being heard.
Mic check. What was I going to say? So you guys talked about some concerns. I have literally been paralyzed by the idea that I'm writing and going down a specific direction, and I'm like, I feel like this has something to do with the people of God. But I'm like, but what if it's not? What if they're like, no, that has nothing to do. Like, I get on stage, perform this piece, and you guys are like, nice poem, but sorry, you didn't like follow the rules or something like that. I don't know. Do you know what I'm saying?
I think your question is a writing, and it's a mindset question. I think that's before you get on the stage. Like the truth about it is, and I think we've had this conversation before, and obviously this is something that you're still dealing with. The truth of the matter is, you can only give forth what's been poured inside you, and when the moment you try to, when I say get out your zone and try to be something that you're not, try to expound upon something that you know nothing about, or try to give a revelation in which you don't have the revelation yourself, you're going to look silly. And so the truth about it is, if your mindset is always stuck on, I'm trying to bless the saints with a new revelation, or I'm trying to give the saints something that they never heard, or something that they're going to feel, or something they're going to relate to, then you've taken your mind and your heart off actually expressing what God has already poured in you. And what your focus needs to be on is, what has God deposited in me? Because that's all you have to really pour out. And really, your concern is not necessarily how this person is going to accept this. I've been to places where people have walked out on my pieces, and I've been and done the same piece at other places where people have given testimony. So my concern is not, are they going to walk out on me? Are they going to feel this, or are they going to feel that? Because the truth is, you're going to make yourself like a clown, a dancing, slavish, I don't want to use bad words, clown, for and more of an entertainer than a minister. And a minister is, when you look at the prophets, I'm going off of this. Take 10 seconds. Look at the prophets in the scriptures. They weren't concerned about men and their faces. They were concerned about delivering what God gave them, and that, I think, that should be your primary concern.
Yeah, I think if my main thing is to make, the first thing for me is, after the whole writing process and all that, for me, I got to make sure that I'm theologically and doctrinally sound. Because I personally feel a personal responsibility, because you got to see how people look at your poems, and they have questions. If that, like, for me, that's a huge, heavy thing. Once I know that that's legit, and I combine that with the fact that, like, for example, if I found the cure to cancer, I would want to share that diligently with every single person that I know. For us, we have the answer for people for eternity. So when I'm confident about what I have, and I'm confident that I've given my best and my everything, from the theological side, the creative side, and now I know that Christ is the answer for every circumstance, I'm gonna get up with a boldness, because I'm confident about what I'm speaking about. So when I get up, I'm really not extremely concerned about how it's specifically going to be received, as far as, like, are they gonna like this? Are they gonna like that? Are they gonna like this? Because of those specific things. Like, and the main thing is just being spirit-led. Like, if you know for a fact that this is a message that God has laid on your heart and burdened you with, or it's a true and honest message that the Lord has given you to share, man, who's to say? Because there's so many times that Christ has used the power of one to turn situations completely upside down. You may be completely rejected by everybody, and everybody may think it's whack, but you subject yourself to that. As a poet, as an artist, you subject yourself to the criticism. You're saying, hey, everybody, hey, is this good or is this bad? That's what you do, and subject yourself to when you get on the stage. So I would say, just be very confident and be sure about what the message is you're conveying, and you should be good.
And real quick, BB. Were you saying also too, as far as the topic, people of God? I know I went over this with you guys the first week. How do you know? Because I know your topic is, all you guys' topic is the people of God. How do you know that you're really writing on the topic that was given to you guys for the slam?
Yeah. That was really it. Cause, like, as I
think I probably could have communicated to you guys. Just know that if your poem affects the people of God in any way, you've done your job. Like, so don't worry about the angle. Don't worry about the angle as much, right? Because it can seem like you're restricted, but you're really not. Like, you can come from any angle, and that's a very broad. Like, don't think in this box. Like, think outside of this box, right? And really, it challenges your creativity. I don't think it puts you in a box. So if it affects anything, like, you can use an example about a sinner, and it will affect the people of God. And you know what I'm saying? It's just how you present it. So it's about angles. You know what I mean? But don't restrict yourself. If it affects the people of God in any way, shape, or form, you're okay.
Also, to touch on that, BB, like, if you have, like, an intention or a purpose of your piece, and you're like, I really want the piece to do this, that's why you also have people that are listening to your pieces and checking it out. And if they're saying, man, this has nothing to do with this, or, like, man, that affects no one on earth but you, Like they'll be able to let you know that, but I doubt that that's what's going on. But that's why you also have critique. They can also critique the purpose and intention of your piece to see if you're actually hitting it on the nail and touching the points that you're trying to touch.
Yeah, thank you, because that was really my that's why I said it was visualizing, because I was like, well, for example, I was going down the direction of a sinner, but I was like, dang, this isn't about the people of God, this is about sinners. So I was like exploding in my head, legit, like so frustrated. But yes.
Thank you.
It's all good. People of God was one sinner, so you all good. Don't think too much. Just write, poet.
We want to hear from everyone else, even if you don't have a question.
Yeah, I have a question. My name is Frederick Sims. I'm from Missouri. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. I've had an issue of sometimes I'm performing, and I will like get so into the piece that like all of a sudden my technical aspects that I've been working on go out the window. And so is that like a thing where you need to work on those aspects more and more? Or like is there like a way of like I'm into the piece but I'm still kind of like thinking about certain things, technical aspects, even though I'm really into it? Like, do you guys have anything about that?
I mean, I could give you an analogy. As someone who's like kind of taught ballet, it's like if you get away from the technique, you can cause injury. The technique is there as a skeleton. You don't have to specific. It would be like seeing somebody doing a swan lake, and then all of a sudden, like the ballerina just starts like dropping it like it's hot in the middle of it. So the technique aspect, it would be dangerous because your message doesn't clearly get conveyed. If you say, okay, I get so lost in the piece, I stop, pronouncing my words, then that doesn't benefit us anymore, because now you've taken something that's technical, that's necessary, because technique is something is necessary. But you have to decide for yourself, like, okay, yes, I need to continuously practice to that degree when nobody is around. When nobody's around, if you know that you're going to submerge yourself that deep into the piece, that is how you have to practice it each and every single time. If you get to where you're sweating on stage, you should sweat every single time you deliver that piece at home. And so that's how you get better at it, and record yourself. I mean, I record myself, and I'm like, okay, you didn't pronounce that word. You didn't pronounce that word. Okay, go again. I'm gonna do my best to be my harshest critic. Okay, that sucked. Okay, that was horrible. Okay, you didn't do this. Okay, you said you were going to do that, and you didn't. So practice to that degree. You can't do anything but get better if you're practicing to the degree. The problem usually happens when you practice at home at kind of like not in a mean way, but at a mediocre level, like at a medium level. I know for Ezekiel, like when he did this letter to Satan, he couldn't practice it in the house because he was really acting like the devil. And so he would have to practice the piece outside of the home to give the full delivery, to make sure that when he does things and he takes these risks, the risks are to be taken during practice. The risks aren't supposed to be taken on stage. When you get to the stage, you should be knowing what you're doing. You should never get to a point to where you're on stage like, let me just try this with this next line. Like, that's a no-go because it goes back to being intentional. I don't know if Ezekiel wants to tag in on that. Hopefully that's helpful. You can tell me if it's not. I'm open.
No, that's helpful. Really is.
Z?
I think he's frozen.
Okay. All right. Does it? Let me ask you a really quick question. Is it an issue when it comes to the tone of your voice? Is it an issue when it comes to getting louder? Like, what is the specific technical issue you feel like you start to lack?
I think it even with even the slam last year, it's like articulation sometimes will go out the window. Like I talk really fast anyway, and so I have to really slow down all the time. And when I get really into it, like my speech will speed up and my articulation will go down. So I think I think it's working on it more, I think.
Yeah, and honestly, for that too, there are articulation for, I don't know. Am I still here? My screen just jumped out.
Yeah,
Hello.
you're good. You're good.
Um, there are articulation exercises that will still help you with that. There are articulation exercises that seem dumb, but they actually help you. And also too, like they're good to do before you go on stage because they loosen the jaw. Because a lot of times when you get ready to talk, you're very tense. So just things to help you open your mouth. And usually when you're doing poetry, you have to open your mouth a little wider than you normally do when you're talking to a person. But there are articulation exercises. I mean, I can shoot you some of those. Also, it may sound dumb. It's like kind of like, red and leather, yellow leather, whether the weather's cold, whether the weather is hot type of stuff. But it works. It works thoroughly. Anybody else? Because I have no idea where Ezekiel went. He probably was supposed to clean the dishes, and his wife probably shut him down. These are jokes.
You are so
Yeah, I have a
childish.
question. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thanks. So I think Ezekiel hit on this. Oh, Sierra, by the way, Sierra from Baltimore. I think Ezekiel hit on, kind of getting into this zone when he was talking to BB. So I was just wondering, like, the poems that you all perform, do you only present the poems that came from that zone, where the writing just hit you? It's like, man, I have to write this. Do you only present those poems because you only think that those poems are worthy, or like do you just present every poem that you think is worthy? Does that make sense? Like when you get into that writing zone, and it's a poem that comes out of the blue, but it's the zone hits you. Like, is that the poem that you feel is worthy to present? Does that make sense? It doesn't sound like it's making sense. But
Let me repeat it back. And can you chime in on this since Ezekiel is gone?
Say it again.
I'm gonna ask your question that you're asking me to make sure I'm asking the right question.
Yeah. Okay.
So are you saying that the poems that we present, do we only present the poems that we feel or we deem worthy from a specific place in a specific zone, or do we also present that we don't necessarily feel are not as worthy?
Right. Okay. That's my question.
So the only thing I would change that you're using for zone, I would change for the Holy Spirit. Because there are plenty of times where I think I want to do a specific piece, and I'll just start really having to pray. I don't know if you guys have been to a poetry event and you see the Lord really leading and guiding, even if it's a secular place, like he's guiding the specific piece. Like I think even with Preston, like he could be in a piece ready to do, his piece about heaven, and then somebody talks about the fact that Jesus is not God. Well, clearly he probably needs to get up and do Jesus is God, and so I don't think it's about what we deem worthy. I think that every piece should be a piece ready to be presentable. I keep saying tools, but you should always be prepared at any time, any place, ready to present any piece that the Lord wants to use that night or that day or whatever the case. I would just say stay ready in those specific cases, because you don't know. And again, like, I mean, sometimes you start doing a piece so many times you just don't want to do that piece no more, and you just wrote something fresh and new. And sometimes we selfishly choose to do the new piece, knowing that the Lord has been convicting us or burdening us to do a piece that we've been done a million times. It may not be new to you, but as a writer, but it's new to somebody else. But you don't want to do it because you have some poet friends who are there, and they're gonna hear the same piece that you've done a million times. And there's so many different things that play into your head. So I would say be in serious prayer anytime you're getting ready to do anything, in the name of the Lord, period. That's just, hopefully that makes sense. And again, you can tell me if it doesn't make sense. Does it? No, yes.
It made sense to me.
It makes good sense. It makes sense.
Okay. Thank you, somebody. I'm like, somebody, please. Everybody's like, nah, we didn't get that. Okay.
Take a minute to get off mute.
Anybody else? I know we got 3 minutos más.
I'll ask you a question if that's cool.
Sure.
think my question centers around pausing, as you were mentioning earlier, just whether it's intentionality or writing with punctuation. Are there any, and maybe it's just the answer really is that punctuation, but are there any things or signals or just things that you use while you're writing to kind of help you figure out where you should pause? I remember one time when I had worked with you, you mentioned like adding selahs to the piece. And like I kind of got it, but I totally didn't understand it. So I don't know if that might be like a good way to go, or like just spacing or pausing in general.
I think a lot of times what happens, and I think maybe everybody who's on this chat can probably relate, where you're doing a poem and you know it's now a rhythmical cadence in your mind. So it's sometimes difficult to stop because you've memorized it. But if you stop, that interrupts the memorization process, which that's just another thing. Know that piece like the black or non-black of your hand. And so in that, you need to know that piece so well to the point, if I say, do that piece from this part, do that piece backwards, do that piece here, so that you know it. When I said take selahs, there's times we deliver the piece and people are still hanging on the last sentence that you said, but you moved on to the next thing, and now it's like they're on a treadmill trying to catch up to your words, but they can't specifically even sit in the moment because you're still talking so fast. If there's something that you know, especially if you've performed a piece consistently and you know where people generally respond, you want to think about making those adjustments. And if there's something that me personally, if I want it to resonate for a little bit before I move on, I want to make sure you got this point. I want to make sure you got what I'm specifically saying right here. I'm going to pause for a moment, just for a moment, and then I'm going to move on from there. Pauses have to be intentional. It can't be, whatever, but you also have to have the wisdom to wait when you know that people are responding in those moments. And sometimes it's an interruption because you've moved on. Have the wisdom to stop and then go back to the beginning, even if you have to. Preston's really good at this, because people, when Preston talks, it's kind of like, I wish he was my dad sometimes. It's like he speaks in just like, it's like lullaby mode, and it's like, and the sun, daughter, it moved upon the face of the deep, and I was just listening, and I pushed my face to the pillow, and then it's like, the way he delivers his poetry is just like, it feels like you just want to just sit up there and just be swayed in the wind of what he's saying. So when he does that, a lot of times people will start talking over what he says, and then he'll stop, and then he'll go back and repeat the line that he said to make sure everybody got what he said, that everybody laughed over or said ooh over, or usually said, just kind of lost their whole face and it melted off over. That's kind of what happens usually when he spits. So add those selahs. When you look at selahs in the Bible, the selahs are there at very strategic, intentional moments. Sit right there for a minute, and so that's my advice on that. Hopefully it's clearer this time.
No? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Can you see me? This is weird. All right, I have a question, kind of comment. Huh? I can't hear you.
I can see you.
Okay. So I have a question, and a comment, right? So there is this topic that I feel like God wants me to write concerning this, and concerning this conference, but it comes from a place of where I used to be very angry, and I feel like God has definitely taken away my anger and healed me from that. But it's like, is it wrong?
Is everybody frozen?
To be angry?
Is it wrong to be angry?
Not wrong to be angry, but is it wrong to portray anger in a poem? How do you do it correctly? How do you portray anger correctly without being offensive? Because I can be very offensive when I'm angry, and I don't want to imitate my anger if I'm not angry anymore, and then offend people. You know what I'm saying? How can you? Yeah, if that makes sense. I don't know if it makes sense.
I guess the question is, how do I display the anger that I dealt with, honestly, without offending people, by displaying the anger I dealt with that God healed me from?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna just tell you from my standpoint, I would be going to offend people. If I'm portraying the anger that I once was, I'm doing my best to offend the mess out of you. That's my goal. I want you to feel very uncomfortable, and because I don't know how to in another way honestly display that. But I would do things in my writing to kind of make sure that don't leave. There's another thing to this. There's some more to this. Ezekiel, what do you think about that? Because I think that if you're going to be honest about like anything about your piece, if it's something that you once dealt with, you can't deliver it in a fake way. Like it depends on how you wrote it. If you're writing it from the first person, if you're writing it from, hey, like I used to be like this and I did this, like it's whack. But if you're going to submerge yourself in the character of who you were, I think the audience is mature enough to know. Yeah, I don't know. Zeke.
I think that's the question. Like you said, like there's no way. Like let's say, like the piece that you have, Truthful Shop. You were really hurting during this situation. Are you going to try to make it seem like you're hurting anymore because God healed you? No, you want to be able to summons some of those same emotions without.
Ezekiel, you can't say something, dude. Like,
what?
What happened?
Summons. Yes.
It's like conjure up some of them.
But no, it's real talk.
Oh, that's an African term. But don't say summon in America. Like that's like you calling up the devil.
Almost. That's real talk.
Or subpoena, whatever.
That's the goal. That's the goal. The goal is to summons the anger for the time being without allowing it to embitter you, to permeate you, or to poison you. And for the moment, though, what you're giving people is what you want them to know, what you want them to understand. And if you want them to understand bitterness, you have to give them bitterness. Now, it's your choice to allow yourself to be, poisoned by that, or allow it to affect you negatively, or allow yourself to remain in that. But as a believer, I don't think that as poets, like when I play Satan, I'm not going home like, yeah, you know what, it's kind of dope. Like you don't imbibe that. You allow that to be for that particular time, to give them what they need to hear. And after the stage, after the moment is done, you allow yourself to come back home. And I think that's kind of the goal, just summoning or summoning.
I would say this too, like I would say don't have a small resolve. Sometimes people use poetry as an avenue to express their anger and then say, but Jesus is real, and that be the end of the poem. Like, put as much effort into the resolve as you do when you are presenting what the actual issue is. Does that make sense? No? Yeah?
Yes.
Anyone?
I apologize for my daughter's running.
Okay, yeah, because sometimes people try to do a quick resolve, and that doesn't really. It has to be edifying. If you're gonna go to that extreme, you got to go to the opposite extreme of edification.
Is it kind of like putting a spiritual button on your message? Like in acting, we talk about the arch of a character, if that makes sense.
Exactly.
Yeah, like no villain is purely villainous. That like, okay, yeah.
You miss me.
Does it sound like computer love to anybody else?
Maybe
is it just me?
Nobody can hear you, Ezekiel.
I can't hear him.
Yeah, I thought it was
we're going on a.
Yeah, sorry guys. I don't really know how to fix the computer. I don't know if everybody's mute, but I don't know what's wrong with it. Maybe Heidi Died knows how to fix it. Well, y'all just gotta look. I know. Huh?
Maybe Ezekiel can in. I think it's Ezekiel's connection or something like that. But
don't hide like she just baked cookies. It's like she just baked some cookies. She's so nice. Okay. We're playing theatrical music in the background.
It's Nikki, I swear.
I'm sorry. I'm working on my album, and that's who I am.
How you gonna be playing music in the background while you on the chat?
The producers are playing it. That's the only way I can get the thing done.
It reminds me of like Dracula or something creepy.
Janette, you look like Malcolm X with the glasses on, low key.
All right.
You look like Malcolm X, the female
Is the
version
time
of him.
up? Is the
Rock.
Is the time up?
Oh, you want to talk about the Nina, the Pinta, the Santa Maria?
Janette, you look like Malcolm X.
All right.
I'm out.
All right. Hey guys, thank you so much for everything. Like, all y'all dope, and I just want to say, Jezreel, I need your personal phone number so I could like double gut you twice. Hopefully you know.
I'll find that feeling. I'll remember that one. That's for sure.
All right. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. YouTubebomb.com. Peace, y'all.
Man.